Are we live now?
We're live.
Thank you. Call a meeting to order. Vice President Paskey?
Present.
President or President?
Present. Here.
Secretary George?
Here.
And myself, we have a quorum. It is 5:49. First of all, we're scheduled for a report from Mr. Donovan Yazzie. Are you ready for that, Mr. Yazzie?
Thank you. Good evening, President Wells, members of the board, Interim Superintendent, Mr. Carlson. Yes, we are ready for the central budget presentation for the this coming upcoming school year. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of things to mention when prepping for the budget this year. Take into consideration, we looked at all the schools here in our district. We have listed 4 high schools, 3 middle schools, 8 elementary schools, an early childhood center, an early college high school. And we also have within our district a charter school. In addition to that, we have approximately 960 employees and approximately 4,859 students, which was the average for this past school year, the FY 22 school year. So those are some of the things we took into consideration when preparing the budget for this school year. Also, we have to look at the student enrollment trends. And so we looked at numbers ranging from prior years, all the way from 2014 until now to get a projected student enrollment amount, which with information from our data assessment department, they show a projected enrollment for this coming school year, 4,724 students, which is approximately 137 students less from the previous year. So we're looking at our enrollment trends is going down. So that's something we got to take in consideration when preparing the budget, because the student enrollment numbers are tied to the state equalization guarantee funding that we get every year. We also went out and got some information from the community. We asked questions relating to what some of the priorities were from a priority rating scale from 1 to 10. We asked them about the priorities relating to instructional materials, and that was the average score for each of those components: instructional materials, at-risk students, professional development, for college and career readiness, transportation services, student staff safety, teachers for the schools and staff, and extracurricular activities. So those are some of the average ratings. We did have, I also listed who we've got the information from students. There was approximately 58 students who we've received information from: parents 18, 5 community members, 106 teachers and staff, non-certified staff include 27, and other district staff, which include administration, 30 survey results. And also mention in some of the short answer responses, some positive impacts that the staff community and the individuals mentioned were, they were appreciative of having the technology and resources that we provided this past school year. They were excited and happy about having in-person learning, and then the athletic programs that the district offered, and also they praised the caring and committed teachers and staff as well too.
I have a question. On that slide previously, you have fiscal year 2020 to 2022? Is it a 2-year cycle?
Oh, my apologies, that's a typo. It should be 2021 to 2022.
Didn't even catch that.
Good catch this.
That's a typo. Thank you for the, and also we looked at the community suggestions on enhancing educational experience for students. One of the things that they mentioned were that the district, if they would have potential to offer more vocational classes, college ready courses, they would like to have some teacher-student in ratios improvement, also provide hands-on learning and field trips for students, and also to provide reliable technology and internet access. Those are some of the suggestions asked or mentioned. Other priorities they wanted us to consider, they wanted us to look into school security and safety measures, provide services, in a sense to help the mental health and support of the students and staff, also looking into building improvements. And the students, the majority of them wanted access to use lockers at their school. And also there was quite a bit of mention about making sure that our technology infrastructure was looked at and modified a little so that we can provide that better service to our students.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
That you said they want the use of student lockers. What?
Yeah. I am not. As members of the board, Interim Superintendent Carlson, the students mentioned that they would like to use lockers. If there was or wasn't, then that's what they mentioned. So that was something that was on a lot of the students' surveys. So I'm just reporting out what was within those surveys. So that would be a high probably question for Mr. Carlson in regards to whether or not the students are allowed to use the lockers at the high school sites or mid schools. Okay, moving on. And so the other thing we looked at too was the current employee count. There is approximately 892 employees. 417 of those are non-certified staff. 87 of the 892 are administration, and certified staff, teachers, and other certified staff within the school, 388. We also have to look at the current statutory requirements and legislative changes. There was several of them relating to salary of staff. There was a 3% salary increase carried over from this past year to all district personnel, which in a sense this year we have to also meet a 4% salary increase for fiscal year 2023 for all personnel, and this includes a minimum salary increases for certified teachers at all the different levels. Level 1, 50,000, level 2, 60,000, and level 3, 70,000. And also what we have to take in consideration too was the mandate to have a $15 an hour minimum wage for all district personnel. And since the district is electing to receive extended learning time funds, that also allocates an additional 3% salary increase for all school-based personnel. And salary is still in negotiation with the union as well. And those levels are minimums are there, $52,777 for level 2. I'm sorry, level 1. Level 2 is $63,333. Level 3, $73,888. So those are just some of the minimums that that teachers have to be paid this coming school year. So also when taking into preparing the budget too, we looked at the trends for the revenue, and we just listed some of the major revenues here that we received over the past um, three years here from 2019 to 2022. You can see that there has been a increase from 2020 to 2021 that was due to the state not holding the 75% of the impact aid. So we looked at these trends here. And so this is what the projection revenue for this coming school year. For the state equalization guarantee, there is $61,362,284. I'm sorry, $63,363,284. The impact aid, what we're putting into the general fund, 11,000 fund is $5,645. I'm sorry, $5,645,155. And so I put that little asterisk there because this year the state wants us to keep track of all the funds that are coming in and out of impact aid. There is a new fund number, 15,100, where 75% of the impact aid funds are going into, and that's also presented in the slides further down the as we go into the presentation as well. So we're only putting in 25% of what we normally got of impact aid into the operational funds. This is just an overview of the expenditure summaries from 2019 to 2021. Instruction, support services, school administration. So this is just the trend here. And then from this trend, we looked at the reports within our, what we spent also within this past year. And so this is the projected dollar amounts based off of the legislative information that we gave you for salaries and student support services and technology. So this is kind of a rundown of what we've got projected for this coming school year for expenses at $107,144,697. This is a summary of all the operational funds. We have operational fund there along with the teachers total, the pupil transportation amount, and that's where I was talking about the 15,100 account. That's the 16 million, and that's the money we put aside to start off that Newcomb project. So that's sitting right there for right now, and then we have also local revenue coming in from the operational $405,366. So kind of going over impact aid money, we budgeted it into 1,000 account, and that's where the $16 million is there. We can use it for capital projects into education or expenditures related to at-risk students. Just kind of a rundown of impact aid summary, and this was for account 25147 from 2019 to 2021. Also for expenditures here, we went ahead and listed the dollar amount spent from that fund as well. And then we got the projected expenses for this year, which total $8,340,556. So this is just a kind of a rough summary of the reports that are also part of this presentation. There's three other pages. There's three other different reports that we have shared with this. They are on they're after this particular presentation. So I just basically gave a rundown and a
Hello.
of the operational funds as well as impact aid and all the funds that we are looking at as far as part of this operational budget and the budget for the district are located.
Okay,
It's
6:03.
yes, 1803.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So on these wages and these increases that you just went over that are mandated, and then without a contract, a ratified contract, how is this working?
Did you hear the question, Mr. Yazzie?
Yes, President Wells, members of
That over to Carlson as well.
So, board member Aspis, members of the board, Superintendent Carlson, to my understanding, the staff was given out a, letter of intent. And the letter of intent, was issued out to the, certified staff. And so if that contract is, basically binding us to have these positions available for these teachers. And as soon as the negotiations are over with the union and we have all that squared away, then that basically that contract ties with the salaries that are coming up that we are presenting here.
I have a question on that.
Go ahead, Christina.
What was just stated, I mean, are we doing things backwards? Because in normal process, when things are mandated and legislated and come forth, and then you have the contract that's already ratified by the members, and then it gets approved by us, the board. And now I think this is going to lead to some issues if we're doing things backwards or waiting or pending. And, you know, we talked about earlier meetings about a retreat happening and going over the organizational. I know that's not contract also, but it's our CBA. But those are positions as well. And so I think we're doing this backwards, and we're trying to speed up or throw this in before the other things are done. And I know it's late. I know it is. But, you know, your emergency doesn't mean that we just ignore all these other things and just, you know, get things done. We're doing this backwards.
Yes, I don't understand where she's.
Well, I
The point
understand
she's
it a little
trying to
bit. I think that the way that the state requires a budget at a certain time, and they're telling us to fund this teacher salary increases and everything, and it doesn't.
Can he speak up, because I can barely hear?
Yeah, I was trying to get a question out of there from you, but I was just kind of trying to explain that the state has deadlines. Like they gave us the equalization formula, probably, I don't know, Mr. Yazzie, was that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe? And so once you get the dollar amount that's going to be spent per student, they give you X amount of time to actually go in and develop a budget. And so the budget, a lot of it is based on speculation as to what might happen. But it's also based on past history, and that's why he's going over the history of some of the expenditures. Again, since we're not done, and you make a good point, as far as the negotiated salaries have not completely been decided upon. And so that could alter the budget process somewhat. But we have a pretty good ballpark idea of where we're at.
Mr. Carlson, can I add?
You betcha.
So what I'm presenting is I'm presenting a plan based off of historical data. And so based off of the data, I'm presenting this plan. And I think last year, budget was if I remember, it was done on June 18th or somewhere around that time frame. The budget was presented, and prior years it was done around the same time. So all I'm doing is presenting a plan and a proposal to the board in reference to all the different legislative mandates. And then, last year the actual CBA negotiation of salaries, I think it was completed in October, and the year before that it was dragged on for almost a year and a half. So I don't know what happened prior to those years, but that's just kind of a little bit of history that has happened with relating to the collective bargaining agreement and things that have happened here. So all I'm doing is I'm presenting a plan based off of the data that we've received, that we've looked at over the past 3 years, and then the expenses that occurred this year, as well as what we can see and what we can look at. So there's other things we look at when preparing this budget. We look at preparing spreadsheets to the Department of Education, which have all the employees' salaries on there that are charged to the operational funds, and then we have to meet those statutory requirements and report that to them as well. So that's what we're using when we do create this budget and present it to the board.
So I have a question, Board President.
Go ahead.
Comparing all of this to the last couple of years, especially with COVID, I know things were out of whack. And because those were late doesn't make this one fine. And we need to get back on schedule and what's supposed to be done. And as far as the speculation, this is money. I don't think we can speculate.
Mr. Carlson, do you mind if I respond?
Go ahead, Mr. Yazzie.
So one thing too we look at when preparing this is we're looking at the documents that the New Mexico Department of Education give us. They give us, Mr. Carlson mentioned earlier, the allocation that we receive. I think it was, if I remember, it's a 901 B5. I think that's what it was. The state gives us a particular allocation for the state equalization guarantee, and that's what we go off of. We go off of that report from the New Mexico Department of Education. When I look at the numbers that we're presenting, we're going off of the revenue reports that we receive. We're going off of the award documentation that the Department of Education give us, and we're looking at that information as well as what's we receive from, like, for example, when I mentioned the Impact 8, they give us a report that tells us what projected dollar amounts they're going to give us. So we're using all that data when preparing these. Is all I'm presenting is a summary and a plan based off of all that data. and all the information that has been given to us.
Does that answer your question, Christina? Ms. Aspas, are you still there?
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Yazdi, proceed.
So the next couple pages, sir, if you go back to that. So the next couple reports are basically what I've summarized. You have the job class detail report that lists all the funds with the expenditures lines that we are reporting to the Department of Education. So that lists all of the funds as well as the bottom line at the bottom too. So this is a 21-page report that kind of outlines the budget that we are submitting, our request for approval, and all the other additional consecutive reports too that are listed too also has information too.
Mr. Carlson,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to are you still there?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. I'm having technical difficulties here.
you're doing good. Go ahead.
I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So, can we get a list? I imagine maybe from Farmington or one of the other districts to where, where the union normally ratifies, normally when it comes before the board, when, all these things, when other districts do this, because again, we were being told that in the past years that they were done around this time, which I don't think is right. I think we're late. And especially comparing it to a time when it was chaos and things were still up in the air. And so I really think we need to check whether it's other districts or preferably state to see when these deadlines should have been met and not wait till the 11th hour or a time when we have to push a special meeting. Because to me, as a board member, when these things happen like this, it sends off a red flag. Why? Why are we having to do a special meeting? And so I know that there was, disturbance in the leadership, and but we can't blame it all on that. And I really like to have a calendar or something so that the board has on hand on when these things should be met. So that, we know what to question, we know what to look for, because I just have no confidence in just being told that this is how it was done 2 years ago or the last few years. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will look into that, Ms. Aspis. I'll get some of the area superintendents on the phone and ask them when they're submitting their budgets to the state and when they're bringing them to the board as well.
Did you hear that, Ms. Aspis? Ms. Aspis?
I couldn't hear it. Can you say that over again?
Well, your question was if I would mind looking into that with other districts in the area, and I certainly will. I will get in touch with superintendents from neighboring districts to find out when they approach the board with budgets for the upcoming year and when they were submitted to the state.
Okay, yeah, make probably to see really from state what they prefer. And because I think in the last few years, because of leadership, we had interims and then the last one and now an interim. So I think because of that change that we've really gotten off schedule and we need to get back on schedule and find out if we're in compliance.
Anything else, Ms. Aspis?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Yazzie. Proceed.
Thank you, Board President, members of the board.
I have another board president.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Aspis.
And, and it's concerning that, did I hear that right about letters of intent that are not finalized or they're not signed?
No, letters of intent have all been sent out for all certified staff other than district employees in administration.
So there's still some that are not completed.
I believe they should have been completed. Is that correct, Mr. Yazzie?
Mr. Carlson, I believe I really can't answer that question. That has to be deferred to the Human Resource Department. But to my understanding, they have sent out the letters of intent. There was an email sent out to all staff letting them know that it was sent out to the certified staff, as you mentioned. As far as how many staff has turned it in or has not turned it, I don't have that information. That would be coming from the Human Resource Department.
I can give you the exact date in just a second. They were sent out. I believe last week. Yeah, I'll have to get back on you, but they were sent out about a week ago, and I'll let you know the exact date when I locate it.
So we still, Mr. Carlson, you were still asking for a board retreat, and especially when I asked about the organizational chart and so we go back to those letters of intent. I guess my thinking is what happened the last year and where those letters of intent went out to staff, administrators, and and some their I don't know what you call it, their status number or coding number, or I don't know what you would call it, but it was changed. And even after they had signed, and to me, a contract is a contract. And so that's why I'm asking, what are we doing?
So the letters of intent were actually due back by May 20th. So they were sent out several weeks ago. And that's for all staff except for administration, as I mentioned before, because they have, their contract goes longer. And so those were not sent out to the administration. Everybody else they were sent out to.
Yeah, because that was an issue last year where some things got changed even after it was signed. And you know, had it not been for a positive change, we could have been in some legal situations. And so, you know, those things I'm thinking about, and that's what's pushing me to really question these today, and especially with the request that you wanted, Mr. Carlson, with the board retreat.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Ashman?
No, not now. Thank you.
Proceed, Mr. Yazzie.
Thank you, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Carlson. The next thing here is we have the 901B 10. This is just a signatory document. Once the board approves the budget, you know, this is just the New Mexico Department of Education asked for this to be signed. They need, as it's written on a document, they need it signed on or before June 20th, 2020. And so that's when that's when basically this particular budget approval is due on that date. Our date of our due date that they gave us is June 2nd. And so I was just wanting to get everything presented to the board so they're aware of the what we put together, what we're presenting to the New Mexico Department of Education, and they'll be reviewing it with us on that date, on the 2nd and the 3rd. And so, you know, and so we have from between now and I guess the next board meeting to if there's any questions or whatnot from here. So we're just asking if the board would look through it and request for approval so that we can submit these reports to the Department of Education and have budget authority come July 1st of next school year, as stated in the document.
You say it's due June 2nd.
Second and third.
So in like 2 days?
Yes, in 2 days.
When
That's why we're having
was,
this meeting.
when was this? Like, when did they give the information? Like, the state gave the information like just recently? Just
Yeah,
2
Mr. Yazzie, when was the state equalization formula given from by the state?
So that was given to us about 3 weeks ago, like you mentioned. The other thing we've had to, part of the school budget when we presented, we have to have the calendar approved on, and we were waiting for that to happen, as well as the approval of the project. So when we got all that stuff, we were able to complete and finish compiling the budget together. So we were waiting for that as well too. So we did take all of that stuff into consideration when we did prepare this. And so a lot of it has to be dealt with, or I'm sorry, a lot of the data we compile is also contingent upon the deadlines we give internally to the district, and you know, what's outstanding as far as purchasing and stuff like that. So those deadlines too were, I think we had those April 1st. From April 1st until now, we've been working on getting these numbers available, getting this data together. So we're presenting to you the proposal, and so that's what we're presenting today.
Anything else, Ms. George?
No, I'll wait for my other question until he's done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Yali, go ahead.
So the next thing we are looking at too as well is we worked with a couple people on this. There was a mention to have retention stipends or hazard pay stipends given to the employees. I have, is Bellamy on here? So we worked with Bellamy, one of the, as well as Dom here, to request to see if we can get approval to give our employees retention and stipends, hazard pay. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bellamy.
Thank you, Mr. Yazzie. Good evening, President Wells, Vice President Haskey, Secretary George, and board members, Interim Superintendent Mr. Carlson, and our CCSD community. So just wanted to share with you a little background of our CARES Carissa, or what we also call ESSER's funds. Sometimes it's confusing because they have a dual name. So we refer to them as ESSER's 1, ESSER's 2, and ESSER's 3. Their names are CARES, Carissa, and ARP. So we're tonight going to talk about the CARES and Carissa, which is our ESSER's 1 and ESSER 2 funds. The ESSER 1 funds were our funds that we received in 2020 and through 2021, and were carried over through now 2022. The intention of the ESSER's 1 or the CARES funds is to provide local education agencies, our LEAs, with emergency relief funds to address the impact that COVID-19 has had and continues to have on our elementary and secondary schools. So in short, the use of these funds, the CARES Carissa funds, are for prevention to the spread of COVID-19 and a response to the impacts of COVID-19. With both of these funding sources, we are provided a FAQ sheet, which is very extensive. It gives us the parameters and guidelines of how we are able to utilize the funds. And these two funds are really braided together. My interpretation of the funds as the federal government released these, one was obviously as a response to COVID. We were in the middle of pandemic in 2020, and we needed to get relief to our school district and to our country as soon as possible. And then as our nation started to see that this was not going away after 6 weeks, kind of as they first intended, they started preparation for the Carissa funds, our ESSER's 2 funds. So they braided our Carissa funds with the CARES funds, and they allow us to use those funds interchangeably. So just kind of wanted to give a little bit of background there. So next slide, just as I was sharing, the FAQ sheet that we are provided with guidance also was accompanied by memos from New Mexico Public Ed, from then Secretary Ryan Stewart, who shared with us how we were guided and what sorts of opportunities we could use these funds for. So there is some confusion, in the, like I said in the previous slide, the main short response is that these funds are as a one prevention measure that we took in our district to support safety, number one, of our students, our staff, our community members that entered our school sites, but then also moving into Carissa funds, which were supporting continuity of services. So we wanted to support that our staff stay with us. It was and still is a very anxious time. Now some of that anxiety is starting to lessen, but from 2020 till now, we didn't know the parameters we were in. So most of our funds had gone to the safety measurement, our masks, sanitizing materials, equipment that we needed, the technology and the infrastructure to move into remote learning. And so that was our main function of our CARES. But there's also in number 11 of the FAQ, the opportunity for other activities that were necessary to maintain the operation of and the continuity of our services. And with that, it supports us employing our existing staff and including purchasing, of course, personal protective equipment for students and staff. Really, the shortcut there is we want to retain our folks. We want them to stay working in our district. We want to have that consistency with our students. So memos came out May 14th, 2020 from Mr. Stewart, secretary at the time, and then in February of 2021. So just helping with the timeline as to why we're moving in the way we're moving. So next slide. So what we are proposing this evening is that one of the opportunities in the CARES Act and in the Carissa Act funds is that, as mentioned, we support a retention stipend. With that, we would like to ask for the criteria of specifically identified staff receiving a retention stipend for continuing their employment with CCSD. Executive leadership, including superintendent and directors, will not receive the retention stipend. And this is due to the governing memo that was provided to us from the federal government through the New Mexico Public Education. So it does highlight that we are not able to support executive leadership. And it specifically details superintendent and directors to not be able to receive the stipend. However, other staff and additional staff identified will have that opportunity. We will have the staff identified as those completing their letter of intent for school year 22-23. As was just discussed, we have had those staff identified of who does plan to stay with us. The amount of the stipend that we are proposing would not exceed $1,000. The final total of the stipend would depend on individual tax allocations. So we have budgeted $1,000 for all of our staff that are not identified above to receive a stipend. And then, of course, depending upon their tax bracket, which is required, it would be then, determined. Final total of stipend, as I mentioned, is based on that tax allocation. The stipends will be disseminated no later than June 30th to conclude our fiscal year and moving into the new school year and new fiscal year. And the next slide. So the staff positions to receive retention are based on our CBA, which is our certified staff, educational support professionals, our transportation employees, and our confidential employees. So that's really every person that is employed by Central Consolidated School Districts. And then next slide.
Does that include services?
I'm sorry, say that again.
All support, well, they have the listing right there.
Yes, so it's a long, lengthy list. So we went through our CBA to see how they're classified in our district. And so it looks small with only identifying 5 titles, but it ends up being 848 of our staff. So our grant budget team is asking for your approval of the forward movement of assigning retention stipends to the identified staff. And I stand for questions.
You want to start?
I want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
In the people who have been identified to receive the stipend, does that also include staff members that were working virtually?
Yes. So if they have signed their letter of intent and they are employed by Central Consolidated Schools and they're coming back for our school year 22-23, yes. The only people excluded, unfortunately, are our superintendent and our directors.
I have a question.
Ms. George.
Ms. Bellamy, so that coordinators will also get the stipend?
Yes, it did identify that that is the option availability. So like I said, it was only the director that was identified and the superintendent.
So does that include like specialists, coordinators, like
All the way
everybody?
down, coordinators,
Oh,
supervisors,
yeah.
specialists, all.
Okay,
Yes, it's amazing. Dom and I and Mr. Yazi on our ESSER's team, we spent about 5 hours going through and double, triple checking all of our payroll sheets to see who is identified as receiving payroll through CCSD. And the titles are interesting. However, they are encompassed in the identification that we shared. So that being, yes, clerical staff, janitors, maintenance, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, bus aides, teachers, teachers' aides. I mean, the list is on and on and on. So the easier way of saying it is if you're employed by Central Consolidated Schools, again, not, sorry, Mr. Carlson, not superintendent, sorry, directors, but everybody else, yes, you are eligible for stipend.
and you said that was $1,000 or less, but you're not which people get how much?
No, we will issue a $1,000 stipend, but as we see in our checks that were awarded, not in your payroll check, because this will be coming out of additional compensation. So we will not be pulling benefits from this. However, the standard deductions that we have to pull, state and federal taxes, those sorts of things, those are required. So fortunately, if a person is in a specific tax bracket, if they're receiving a higher pay, let's just say, for example, you have a person that their $1,000 stipend may be $700 because 30% may be coming out to their taxes. I'm just giving an example. I don't know that, specific of details of people's payroll, but, based on that. So obviously a lower paid staff member would have less taxes coming out. And so therefore they would have an increased closer to that $1,000 mark.
Great. Thank you for your clarity, Ms. Bellamy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to say thank you for the folks that have worked so hard to be there for our students. And we appreciate the support that our board has given us, and all of us have come together through these times. So we'd like to be able to say thank you.
Dang, I missed it by.
Are there any other questions?
Was that Miss George asking to, just
He
kidding.
wants to go back a couple years.
I said I missed it just by that much.
She has a question.
I have a question though.
Yes, ma'am.
It's actually for Mr. Yazi.
Okay.
Let me see, or I guess I'll ask Mr. Superintendent, interim superintendent. The surveys that went out, it said 58 students took it. Out of all the 4,859, why only 58 students? And then so it was given to our 5 community members responded, but why the low numbers?
So that was actually, I'm gonna let Mr. Yazi finish up the answer, but so that was actually sent out. And there was a robocall for people to be involved with that survey. And that's just the number of people that, the community should have gotten the call, but that's the number that actually decided that was an important enough survey for them to take advantage of. Is that about right, Mr. Yazi?
Yes, Mr. Carlson. So there was 200, I believe there's 244, if I'm not mistaken, that responded to it. I think last year we only got like 40 participants. And so if we compare it to what we did last year, we've got a pretty good number. It was also, we requested for it to be posted on the school website, Facebook pages, as well as ask for the principals to help us with getting the information out as well too. So those are those were the responses that we've got and the information we received.
Okay, so were there 58 students? Was that like across the board, or is that just like one high school, one middle school, one?
Kirtland,
It was,
Newcomb.
it was across the board, I'm assuming, it was available for students. Is that correct? Ms.?
Your daughter brought in those things already.
Oh, hot watermelon.
Correct, Ms. Carlson, it was across the board as far as students go at each of the different locations.
And I think that's a good question. I think that in the future, in order to make sure that folks understand the importance of it, we can probably do more to get more support. I think it's one of those surveys that folks just kind of hear about and they're like, well, I guess I could do that, but and just don't avail themselves to the opportunity. But it sure doesn't seem like a lot based on the, you know, number of employees, number of community members, number of students.
Yeah.
We would definitely like to get more.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Astor?
So, Mr. President Wells, if I may ask, just in conclusion to our request, if approved, if you would share that in the minutes that you're approving that. One of the stipulations to this is for me to share the response of the board, the agenda, so that we can move forward with providing these to our staff.
There was a whole jumble there and I never understood one thing. Did anybody else?
She said just put it in the board minutes if it's approved. If it's approved, if we approve it, then make sure it's reflected in the board minutes.
Can you hear me?
Sometimes.
Two different ways.
Yes, yes, we
Go
can
ahead.
hear you.
Whoever's in your background, we hear him too.
That's you.
Board President, I think Ms. Aspas is on a conference call and at the same time she's on Zoom. She probably has to disconnect one or the other.
I'll hang up on the conference.
Hang up on it there, Mr. Wells.
Which one hanging up?
I think she hung up.
I'm still on, but I hung up on
There.
the conference.
Is it in this one or that one?
He's over there now. He was here.
Technology.
I don't know, Jared, what do you got?
We can, yeah, if she can hang up on the conference call, she's right now on the,
She's on Zoom.
on Zoom now.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Astor.
Can I get a fork? Is that a fork? No, I'll stick my hand in
Go ahead, Ms. Astor.
because he's gonna be.
Okay, okay, I was trying to, the board doc. Sharon, is this, the slide on board docs?
Ms. Aspas, all the documents are on board docs.
Okay, I couldn't get onto it, but anyhow, can you go through the slides again, Bellamy?
I sure can. Would you like me to start from the beginning?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the slide that we're looking at now is the background of the CARES and the Carissa funds. So the CARES we also refer to as ESSERS 1, and the Carissa, CRRSA, we refer to as ESSERS 2. So they can be confusing because they're the same thing, but they have different names. So the ESSERS were originally provided to the LEAs and the education agencies as relief funds to address the impact of COVID-19 and that the impact that we still have on the elementary and the secondary schools. So in short, the funds and the purpose of the funds were for prevention to the spread of COVID-19 and the response to the impacts of COVID-19. So it can be confusing sometimes.
Try again, Ms. Aspis.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what's going on. Sharon,
You should
Yes,
quantify.
Ms. Sassas, this is Sharon.
there's echo or something going on. I'm gonna get out and then I'm gonna come back in.
Okay.
Did you go to a different location?
I don't know. I think so. It's really bad in different places. There she is.
Is that you, Ms. Aspis?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I don't know what was going on. I think I had two windows open and I was getting feedback and I was getting that echo.
Okay.
I really wanted to see the slide though. And that's what I was trying to look for earlier, but I'm jumping back on to Zoom.
Christina, I'm gonna send
Okay,
you,
I'm back on.
I'm gonna send you the slides.
Bellamy, can you go over the one that shows the different positions?
Yes, so the staff positions to receive the retention stipend, we went through the CBA. And because there's a very extensive list of titles, and some titles are a little different where we would think maybe they're clerical staff, they might be called confidential secretary or some different verbiage within our district. We looked at the subtitles in the CBA that classified all of the different positions that we have. And so according to that CBA, they identify certified, and then there's a long list of titles underneath certified, and then educational support professionals, transportation employees, and then the confidential employees. So these titles encompassed every person that receives a paycheck through Central Consolidated Schools that is not a contracted staff. They are actually an employee of CCSD.
Okay, Bellamy, Mr. Carlson. So these, you were saying that they were identified as confidential secretary, and
Mhm.
so as going over is, I guess, thinking about how ESSER comes in and how it's stipulated on what you have to comply or what the district has to comply to. Is there certain positions, or is it just open to whoever you want to be paid under that?
Great question. So the retention stipend the focus is to retain our staff that have experienced these hard times with us. The only stipulation that would not be allowed to receive a stipend would be a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, or a director. So other than that, it left it open, and it actually recommended that we move to our CBA to then identify who is classified and how the positions are classified.
So, okay, now that two things jumped at me while you were, and I was trying to go back, and I'm very sorry. I apologize for making you do this again, but I thought you had listed the different positions, but I see here that it was just a general description or identification of them. And so, and then during your presentation, you talked about how these would cover, and yet we don't even have the CBA ratified. And what prevents us from giving an employee this retention stipend, and yet there's nothing saying they have to stay here since those contracts are not done?
That's a great question. So where we are coming from within the ESSERs is those that have been employed with us from school year 21 through 22, utilizing these funds moving forward. So it would be my understanding that the ratification of the CBA would be moving forward into the next school year. So that would pertain to school year 22-23. But these funds would be those that we are retaining moving from 21-22 moving forward.
Okay, okay. And then also, I know long before I've asked when these CARES fund, the ESSER funds, when they were starting to come in, and I asked the question, is our ancillary services getting these? And the way I look at those are contractors, and they're not district employees. And I was told, well, not really told, not explained, but I was just basically, it was put to me that the way and this is my opinion, I'm the superintendent and you're not. And so I did pose that question at the New Mexico School Board Association on where those funds should go and what were they intended for. And I was told that it was the board's discretion. It is up to the board to see where they go. And for me, I would like to see more done for our district employees. So, and that's why I want to take a look at this, these positions because you were talking too about their taxable income, and I think from what we've seen, what has been through the what do you call it, the procurement process, some of these income levels. So I think that supports me in saying that we need to keep with our district employees.
Yes, and Ms. Aspis, we are exactly on the same page that these stipends will be for district employees only. So if it is a contracted position, they will not receive a stipend. But if they are an ancillary position that is an employee of our district, they would receive a stipend. So for instance, like social workers that are employed by CCSD, they will receive the stipend.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you're exactly correct. And that is where these funds will go. They will go to district staff.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. I'm glad I was able to and happy to clarify that. I really want to make sure that there are no misunderstandings of how the funds, it is our intention that we use these with good fidelity and integrity. And that is why we are now at this point, because our first and foremost priority is our students. And we wanted to ensure that all of these funds were at the student level first and securing the safe environment. So that is why, in our opinion, I'm just going to speak for the team. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but we didn't jump to give stipends first within the first 2 months. We felt that it was more important that we handle our district needs at the student level first. And so now coming through much of the needs that we have had, with operations team to be able to our construction, all of the things that we've needed, we have been able to address those issues. And then moving forward now, we're able to support the staff that have hung on with us through this time.
Okay, and I hope it's because I've been hearing some things that whereas one person really felt that they should have gotten a stipend, they weren't part of that, and then in their perception or their view, their opinion, was that most of the administrators got it. And I would like to say, you know, as you made that chain of who should we service first, you know, you decided the students first, and I'm happy with that. But I believe the next one are the teachers, and you know, and therefore on that.
You are exactly correct. And teachers fall under the certified list. And so therefore, you know, they are that first addressed on the list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I got a question.
Yours.
Mr. Carlson, it was mentioned 16,000 was available for mental health and at-risk students for safety, security, building improvements, and use of student lockers, and updating technology infrastructure. Do you know what our plans are for safety and security, as far as what's been happening in the news that we could spend this money on? Like, as far as, because right now, kids come into the schools and they just come in with their backpacks. Nobody checks backpacks. Nobody, you know, I know that some of the schools aren't using their lockers and they just let the kids carry the backpacks to school with them during the school day. And so how are we prepping for the school safeties after the recent news, and how I think that Kirtland area is good because they have the San Juan County Sheriff's Department there. They're there. But here on Navajo Nation, you know, we had SROs, but, you know, due to their limitations of manpower, and then, and then one of them retiring, you know, we don't have that security here for the community because of their manpower. But I don't know how we can get back in, you know, working with the Navajo Nation police officers for the SROs to be here in Shiprock or in Newcomb area, Nosh Chitty. And with that, you know, I know some schools have the metal detector wands, and I think that that should be implemented because we're here now. It's, you know, I think that we're at that moment now where we have to make drastic changes. And I know a lot of people will not agree to have the metal detector wands or a metal detector, but right now we need something because it's at that stage now. I mean, we had Aztec that had the shooting. It's too close. And, you know, and the recent incident that happened at the graduation, you know, we're lucky that there was no guns involved there. And we're just at that point where we have to put some money into actual security. And to do those metal detector wands, you know, our security guards that we have, are they able to do it? Because they're just level ones. You know, what is the process with that? Because to do those, or, you know, you have to be a level 2 or level 3 to, you know, here on Navajo Nation, if you're a level 1, you can't do those things. You can't really carry anything if you're a level 1 guard. And so I think a lot of this money that we have really needs to go to, and then like canine searches. I know we haven't had those in a while for, you know, suspicion of drugs or drug use. I know that there's some schools that have a really bad cases of drug use, and I've seen it on, you know, students posting it on Instagram and stuff right in the school building. And, you know, I think that warrants canine dogs to go in and you know, just run through the schools and help the schools out. and let the students know that, hey, we're paying attention and, you know, this is not allowable. And
Yeah, there was I'm not sure what all the questions were, but I can address a little bit of just in general, since you asked about a lot of different things. At the last school board meeting, you brought up some concerns that I've spoken with the safety team about, and that they have been working since then. So even before this latest tragedy happened, they are working to address some issues. Safety is a huge priority, and we do have some money extra money that we're going to be spending down. That's in our cash reserves, and that's going to be a priority. And we're going to have a district team that's going to talk about the different areas that we need to spend some money on that we've been lax recently, and that is one. We have also talked about school resource officers. We can't do a whole lot about some of that.
Yeah.
Just because the Navajo Nation does not necessarily provide officers for us,
Right.
but we can increase security forces and we can train them. As far as your level 1, level 2, level 3, that's more knowledge than I have right now in this situation, but I can assure the safety team does have that knowledge, and we will be looking into that. What else we can do as far as metal detectors and those other things you mentioned. So, but it is going to be, it's a huge priority. And we all know it is right now, especially. So we are working to address safety needs.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Christina.
As you were talking about security, how, that's something that we're going to have to really look into. And it can't just be us. It has to be the state as well. They're going to have to be willing to fund us more as regarding safety, and I did request before, like housing, and up here at Ojo, they renovated the house over here, and I sure hope that that's the plan, is to house a Navajo police there, and then as well the same partnership with Newcomb and Oshchidi and Navajo police, and it's and then what occurred at Newcomb's graduation, the person was a known
Troublemaker?
yeah, and then I'm also wondering, was he the same one that twice, 2 years ago or last year, that attacked a teacher, a female teacher out there, and in Newcomb? And I'm wondering if this is the same individual. And so he was a known troublemaker, and now look at what it escalated to. So I hope it's our plans, and it has to be, we as board members need to bring up at the association or the with Superintendent Carlson at his meetings. It needs to be stressed that we need more funding in this area, and it's becoming hopefully, we're not reacting, and that we can be prepared for these things. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Or comments?
If Donovan had more to present.
I think he's finished.
Is he
Yeah,
finished?
Bellamy's last, that's
Yeah, Bellamy was the
action
last one.
item.
Oh, yeah, that
Possible
was,
action items.
I guess I'd just like to make a comment. I agree
Tell
that,
yourself you're allowed to.
okay, but you're back. But you're back. So, that is a huge concern to me too, safety, especially in regards to what happened at Newcomb High School. It was very, very troubling and concerning to see the response to the situation, and then also to see the principal, the injuries he sustained in trying to control the situation. And like Secretary George mentioned, we're just very fortunate that it didn't involve weapons other than someone using pepper spray, because we had children there, we had elders there, we had family members. Just, it was an array of people that we were responsible for. And it was an event that was put on by the district, and we didn't even have a nurse's station. So, when people fall, they hurt themselves or they get overheated. I mean, just an area where to triage people in case of injuries. And we didn't even have a station. So people were running around trying to find ice and get ice to get back into the building and so forth. And it was chaos. And it was the lack of training in terms of, that I feel in terms of the situation, as I hope that, because, military, and board member Montoya can attest to this, you train and you practice certain drills so that it's just a habit. And in this case, no one had set roles, so everybody was just running all over the place, and it was really interesting to see. It was not something that was good. I'm glad that the Navajo Nation Police, the response, that they quickly came out and were able to apprehend the people that were involved in that altercation. But it wasn't something that was that I really don't want to see again. I mean, that's something that we can be proactive and put different resources in place, so we minimize the risk to our families, to our kids, to our staff members, and to our school district. So it's all about prevention. And so that's kind of my hope too. And like board member Aspis also mentioned, I really do hope that we can allot funding for housing on campus for a police officer. At least they would be housed there. They don't have to be the resource officer there, but that's where they would be. The response time would be decrease for them. So thank you.
Mr. Yazdi, you continue with item B. You mentioned 901B, did he not?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was,
He
yeah,
covers it.
he covered that. And
We're
then
in the
Bellamy
ESSER.
did C, yeah, we're on 3 now, possible
So
action.
the action item.
Item C then, Mr. Yazdi.
That was Bellamy.
She already did that.
Yeah, she
So
already did that
it's-
one. We're on
3.
3.
I meant 3. I said C. I apologize. Do we vote on this now?
President Wells, I do want to add something that will need to be reflected in the minutes. We have changed the verbiage. Originally, it says hazard pay. And we would like to kind of make sure that that's reflected in the minutes that we send in as retention stipends. So as a motion is made to accept that, we want to make sure that that is the verbiage that goes into the state.
I need a motion then to change the verbiage from hazard pay to retention stipend.
And I make a motion to change the verbiage from utilization of ESSER for retention stipends for district employees.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Vice President Hafke,
Yes.
Secretary George,
Yes.
Ms. Aspis. Are you still with us, Christina?
Yes. I'm still here, yes.
Okay. Did you hear the motion?
Sharon, are we doing this correctly?
Yeah, no, we need to start with letter A under possible action items 1 by 1. We're skipping over to C. So we need a motion, a first motion and a second motion for the final school year 2020-23 school district operating budget.
I'll back up and redo this.
Okay.
I need a motion
For A.
for
accept
A,
it.
the final school year 20, well, I can read it, 22-23 school district operating budget. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll
Does
motion.
that mean we're not approving it?
I don't know. I'll motion.
Okay, do we have a second? To approve that?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item A, final school year 2022-2023 school operating, school district operating budget. Vice President Askey,
Yes.
Secretary George,
Yes.
Ms. Aspas?
We're voting?
Yes.
I vote no, mainly because of the time, and I think we need to get our act in order. But I
Mr.
say
Mon-
no.
Your vote is no?
Yes.
Mr. Montoya?
Yes.
And myself, yes. I need a motion to approve the school year 2022-2023 school district operating budget 901B-10.
I motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Cheryl seconded it this time. Ms. Askey,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Ms. Asmus,
No.
Mr. Montoya,
Yes.
myself, yes. Item C, utilization of ESSER for
Retention stipend.
say it again.
Retention stipend.
Yeah,
Retention pay.
Retention pay.
Yeah, that's what I have.
I think it's retention stipend.
Oh, okay, retention stipend.
Do we
we need to
change it first?
pass it and then change the name. Change the name and then pass it. Sharon,
Your amendment first.
we need a motion to change the name and then pass it.
Sharon?
I'm sorry. Yes, that'll be correct.
Okay, now,
Thank you.
I need a motion to change the name of hazard pay to retention stipend for district employees.
I motion.
Do I have a second?
I second.
With that, Ms. Haskell.
Yeah.
Second that one. Okay,
Well, she said it first, but Christina also said it.
okay. Who's gonna take it then?
I'll take it.
All right, Ms. Haskell,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Ms. Aspas,
Yes.
Mr. Montoya,
Yes.
myself, yes. All right, utilization of ESSER for, cross that, I don't know,
Retention stipend.
retention stipend for district employees.
I motion.
Do I have a second? Ms. Aspas, you gonna second that?
I second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Ms. Haskell,
Yes.
Ms. George,
Yes.
Ms. Aspas,
Yes.
Mr. Montoya,
Yes.
myself, yes. No other items. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
For a second,
I'll second.
Ms. Asmus,
Yes.
Ms. Haskey,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Mr. Montoya,
Yes.
myself, yes.
So that you.
It is
Motion, right? Mhm.
7:30.